Muslims had settled in Anatolia after the Romans were defeated in the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. Disturbed by the news coming from the east, the Pope had launched the First Crusade. They were able to move deeper into the Middle East and establish the Crusader states. Shiite Fatimids, on the other side, acted on the opportunity and attacked Jerusalem to capture it from the Muslims. Shortly afterwards, the Crusaders marched on Jerusalem and captured it, severely persecuting the locals. Yet one man, Musul Atabeg of the Great Seljuks, Imad ad-Din Zengi, had been able to partially consolidate the Muslims and took the city of Edessa back from the Crusaders. His son, Nur ad-Din Zengi, had retaken more than 50 Crusader-occupied settlements and distressed the Crusader leaders deeply. The Crusaders invaded Egypt and besieged the city of Cairo. Having no other choice, the Fatimids requested an urgent help from Nur ad-Din Zengi, and he sent his two commanders, Shirkuh and Salah ad-Din, to deal with the invading Crusaders. They were able to decimate the Crusaders in Egypt. Shirkuh was appointed as Grand Vizier by the Fatimid ruler, and Salah ad-Din took over the position after his uncle deceased. He took down the deeply weakened Fatimid dynasty and established a new state, pledging his allegiance to the Abbasid Caliphate. Being supported by the Muslim populations in the region, Salah ad-Din seized Syria following the death of Nur ad-Din Zengi and significantly strengthened his realm's economy and military power. Now it was the time to deal with the Crusaders. Salah ad-Din was planning to expel the Crusaders from the region. He was constantly discussing with his advisors about Jerusalem. He could not live with the cross at the top of the Dome of the Rock, and the massacres perpetrated by the Crusaders in Jerusalem. On 1177, the Crusaders had butchered many Muslims around the town of Ramla. Hearing this, Salah ad-Din marched from Egypt to confront the Crusaders. When he arrived at Ramla, he dispersed his army to secure the rural settlements. Many Crusaders were taken prisoners along with their loots. However, the 16-year-old king of Jerusalem, Baldwin IV, was tailing Salah ad-Din. When Salah ad-Din and his 26,000-strong army was exhausted and dispersed, suddenly appearing Crusader knights impetuously charged on the Muslims and surrounded them as two blocks. As the sunset arrived, Salah ad-Din was able to barely escape, and he had lost more than 20,000 men, including one of his sons. The news spread and panic reigned. Rumors quickly spread back to Egypt that Salah ad-Din himself was killed in the battle. Eventually, Salah ad-Din arrived at Egypt with his personal guards, and his people took a deep breath. After 2 years, Salah ad-Din was able to fully recover, and he trained a new army with newly devised strategies against the Crusaders. On 1179, the Crusaders and Salah ad-Din met at Marj Ayun. As the Crusaders were marching downhill on the coast, they saw the tents that belonged to Salah ad-Din and his army. Considering a surprise attack, the Crusaders charged downhill on the Muslims. The initially successful attack did not end well for the Crusaders when Salah ad-Din quickly regrouped and suddenly attacked on the imprudent Crusaders. Salah ad-Din had won the battle. Salah ad-Din was able to build very well on this victory, and he captured all the nearby settlements from the Crusaders. Among the places he captured was the Beit al-Ahzan, where the tomb of the prophet Jacob located. The Crusaders were in no state to endure any more harassment from the Muslims. Baldwin IV and Saladin agreed to make peace in 1182. According to the agreement, the Muslims and the Christians would not harm each other or their properties. During the peace with the Crusaders, Saladin attacked Armenians who had broken an agreement with the local Turkmens and captured a number of castles. Saif ad-Din Zengi, the younger brother of Nur-ad-Din Zengi, had deceased in his 30s. After Ismail Zengi, who was the son of Nur-ad-Din Zengi, was poisoned in his 20s as well, the news reached Saladin that the new rulers of Mosul were exchanging letters with the Crusaders to plan a double-pronged attack on himself. Upon hearing this, Saladin quickly besieged the city of Mosul, but he was not successful here and changed his focus on the city of Aleppo. In Aleppo, the grandson of Nur-ad-Din Zengi, Imad ad-Din Zengi, could not stand against him, and the city was easily captured by Saladin. Imad ad-Din was told that if he would agree to cooperate against the Crusaders, Saladin would grant him the rule of Nusaybin, Raqqa, and Suruj. Afterwards, Saladin fell terribly ill. His sickness had reached to such an extent that his brothers asked him to speak his final wills. Saladin prayed and vowed that if he would get well, he would completely dedicate his life against the Crusaders and to retake Jerusalem. Due to the leprosy, Baldwin IV had died in 1185, and the new king of Jerusalem, Guy de Lusignan, broke the peace agreement with the Muslims, relaunching raids and pillages. Saladin specifically made a vow to kill Renaud de Chatillon, whom had attacked a Muslim pilgrimage caravan and beheaded the pilgrims, yelling, "Where is Muhammad to save you? Call him for your help." After his vows, Saladin miraculously recovered his health and praised Allah for his mercy and blessings. Saladin did not fight against any Muslim faction from then on. The disturbed peace between the Crusaders and the Muslims was the last straw for Saladin. He sent envoys to all the corners of the Muslim world to request support against the Crusaders and to retake Jerusalem. Muslim warriors around the world, mostly from Egypt and Syria, from Abbasids to Turks, joined his army. The newly formed Great Army was on its way to Jerusalem. When the news arrived at Jerusalem, some of the Crusader leaders suggested to stay in Jerusalem for defense. However, the king took the suggestion as cowardice and decided to battle against Saladin on an open field. The Crusaders made their preparations and marched north to confront the Muslims. With a cunning tactic, Saladin assaulted the castle of Tabaria and captured it in one day. With this, he forced the Crusaders to battle at a location of his own preference on a flat land near Tabaria. Saladin had secured his back with the Jordan River, and he was waiting for the Crusaders on a hill of volcanic rock which was called the Horns of Hattin. The Crusaders did not find any water source on their way to the Horns of Hattin. The weather was very hot and dry. They had to pierce through Saladin's army to reach water. The Crusaders, having no other choice, attacked Saladin, but they were repelled. The situation was very desperate for the Crusaders as they were extremely tired and thirsty. They made a final and vain attempt to break the Muslim lines, and it ended in a complete failure. Seeing his enemy in exhaustion and disarray, Saladin ordered a general attack. Shortly, the Crusaders were surrounded. 30,000 were killed and another 30,000 Crusaders were captured. Among the captured was the king of Jerusalem and all the crusader counts except the Count of Tripoli. The savage prince of Kerak, Renaud de Chatillon, was captured as well. They were chained and brought to Saladin's tent. Saladin asked the prince of Kerak to accept Islam, but he refused. Following this, Saladin proclaimed that he has vowed to avenge the Muslim pilgrims and suddenly struck Renaud de Chatillon's neck and beheaded him. He then showed his head to the captured crusaders and told them that he paid the price for insulting the Prophet Muhammad. Then he ordered the execution of all the captured Knights Templar and Knights Hospitaller. The rest was to be chained and sent to Damascus. After this victory, Acre, Nablus, Jaffa, Tebnin, Beirut, Ascalon were captured mostly peacefully by the Ayyubids in 3 months. Upon hearing that Saladin is marching to Jerusalem, pious Muslims from around the region was making haste to join him. Saladin had reached the outskirts of Jerusalem and established his army camp. The Muslims were looking at the walls of the city as they were feeling a great yearning. The mangonels began beating the city walls. Saladin was informed that the northeastern walls were weaker and he ordered his mangonels to concentrate fire on that part of the walls. The walls did not stand a chance and collapsed shortly. The Crusaders surged from the collapsed part of the wall to repel the Muslims, but they were encircled. Realizing that there is no hope, the Crusaders wanted to surrender and asked for mercy. However, the Sultan rejected this, saying, "I will take the city forcefully as you did before. I will leave no Christian alive in Jerusalem just as you left no Muslim alive in the city." The Crusaders responded, "If you do not allow us to leave the city in peace, we will return and kill all of the 4,000 Muslims in the city, kill our wives and children, demolish all the holy places in the city, and burn the Dome of the Rock to the ground before sallying out to confront your army to the last drop of our blood. There is no good for us in living from now on. Each one of us will not die before killing a few enemy. There is no better end for us now." After hearing these, Saladin accepted the peace proposal under certain conditions. They would pay 10 dinars for each Christian men, 5 dinars for each women, and 2 dinars for each children. Anyone unable to pay will be taken as prisoner. All the crops, goods, weapons, and houses will be confiscated. And finally, the Crusaders will be able to leave for the city of Tyre. The agreement was sealed. After 40 days, 16,000 Christians who could not pay their ransom were taken as prisoners. Saladin and his army entered the city on October the 2nd, Friday 1187, before the time for noon prayer. As soon as the Muslims entered the city, they cleaned the holy Masjid al-Aqsa from idols and impurities. The Knights Templar had desecrated the holy site and used it as living quarters and a storage house for wine and pork. It was cleaned diligently and reverted back to its original state. The Dome of the Rock was washed with clean water and beautiful fragrances was spilled all around. The huge cross was replaced with a crescent. Nur ad-Din Zengi had ordered a special mimbar to be crafted for Masjid al-Aqsa. He hoped that he would be able to retake Jerusalem. However, the deed was accomplished by Saladin, one of his senior commanders. The crafted mimbar was placed next to mihrab. The carpets were laid. Adhan was called. The Muslims made their prayers with tears and prostrated towards Mecca. The prayers emphasizing the oneness of God were echoing in Jerusalem, which is the third holiest city in Islam. The praises were made to God with these verses in Quran. Say, He is Allah, the one and only, the eternal, the absolute. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, and there is none like unto him. The capture of Jerusalem by the Muslims had been a great shock for the Christendom. The Pope had to call for the Third Crusade.